No! God damn it. Greetings, comrades. Okay, I hope that showed up. But anyhow, this is 88 Gelu, here with my third deck review, War Beast's Wrath. Once again, I'm just going to check that this thing is working. Okay, so this deck, for one thing, when I was making it, I already knew that it had a lot of errors, but for now, it seems to be acceptable. Now, first up, the war beasts in this whole menagerie are Uberon. I wasn't able to pronounce that for 2 seconds. Ninren, Titanics, and Gafatra. Oy, these complicated, weird, chaotic names. Then for the Conjurers, there's Runan, or Ranan, and Appelai, or however you pronounce that. Appelai. Now, first up for this deck, originally I was going to use Nebek, or whatever that conjurer's name, the one who from Secrets of the Lost City, who has the ability that War Beasts lose 10 recklessness for each element type that they possess. However, that had 2 major drawbacks. For one thing, that put a lot of strain on Ronan surviving, and for a second, that means that Titanics, even with the battle gear that I gave him, which is the Sandstorm Shroud, would still have 10 recklessness. And Ninren, even with the Citadel Lodestone, would still have 5. So that wasn't going to work out so well, so I switched it with Appelai, whose ability is to reduce recklessness damage dealt to war beasts you control by 10 for each Mugic counter on him. And when a war beast you control becomes target of Mugic or ability your opponent controls, he gains another Mugic counter. I also gave him a Mepetian Balladier's Flute. Originally, I gave him... Oh boy, this thing... Another error. What the beep? Excuse. Okay, as I was saying, before that very unfortunate error, originally I gave him... Hold on, I'm trying to show you the image. The Chalor. It's super rare, it's from Silent Sands, and the equipped creature cannot be the target of abilities. And reveal this battle gear at the beginning of the game. However, there was a major drawback to that, which was that then straight off from the beginning of the game, Ninren had 5 recklessness, and he had only 1 Mugic counter, blah blah blah, etc, etc. So I gave him a Mepetian Balladier's Flute. Even though this kind of makes him a bigger target. Next up, we have Ronan, who has the ability to reduce recklessness by 10, and if you pay a Mugic counter, he can heal 10 damage to target creature. I gave him a Revita Flower, so if he ever became engaged, in which case he would most definitely lose, I could sacrifice the Revita Flower to give Appelai 2 Mugic counters, thus covering the recklessness that he would have lost and giving him the ability to play some Mugics. Next up on Gafatra, he is a war beast with the ability Defender Conjurer, which is very useful, especially since this guy has pretty good health and only recklessness 10. And with the Revita Flower, his energy becomes 60. And usually what I would do is sacrifice it to give Ronan 2 more Mugic counters, so that way he can heal a total of 40 energy, or just cast some Mugics. Next up is Uberon, who has average energy, 50, and Unfortunately, he's the only one of the frontliners who starts with air and earth attacks. He has Recklessness 15, Fireproof, and Waterproof 10, which can be very helpful against Underworld and Overworld decks. I gave him a Double Edge, just because I don't have that many cards from Dawn of Peril, so I don't have any Torwigs or Vlaric Shards. But if I did, then I would obviously replace it, because that would put a lot more strain on Ronan being destroyed. And stuff like that. Next up is Ninren. Oh, and that's because Double Edge also gives you Recklessness 5. Ninren is the main attacker, at least in this version of the deck, because for one thing, he has the highest HP out of anyone on the team. He also has the highest speed, and his power and courage, I think, are also the highest. No, he has the same courage as Titanics, and he actually has less power than Gaffatran, which is kind of weird. But either way, the main reason that he is on the team is, as I said, he has high energy, and also he has range. Which means that this guy will be able to dive in and attack your opponent's weakest forces first. So he might be one of your central attackers, and this also makes him especially good against other War Beast decks, because most War Beast decks actually don't have Gaffatran or a guy with the ability that has Defender to give their Conjurers backup support. And usually, just like here, they rely on the Conjurer that's in the bottom of the pyramid. And I give him a Citadel Lodestone to give him Earth attacks. Last, we have Titanics. I wouldn't ordinarily have picked him for this deck. Even though he has a lot of energy and Intimidate, Courage, and Speed 50, his Intimidate abilities aren't that useful for this deck because the only stat attacks in this deck are Progressive Speed, Dexterous Storm, and Arbor Smash, and those are all stat checks, meaning that his ability is only good if your opponent's deck is reliant on one of these two stats. I give him a Sandstorm Shroud because most of the attacks are air attacks, and this gives him air. Now, ordinarily, if you were making a deck with this type of design, you would replace Titanics with Blasmatan. Unfortunately, I don't have Blasmatan. Blasmatan has both air and earth attacks, and he has air and earth 5, and I think he has 25 recklessness. So, basically, that would make him also in the same league as Ninren. He'd be a much stronger support attacker, but he wouldn't be able to quick attack your opponents. Oh, that's a funny way of saying it. However, you could always give Blasmatan a Bronze Flight or a Skeletal Steed or something like that to give him range. Actually, I think Skeletal Steed just gives you Swift 1. So yeah, that's the layover of my creatures and battle gear. Onto the attacks. Is this thing still recording? Yes, it is. I'm getting out of breath from talking so fast. First up, we have 2 Slow Sands, an Earth Pulse, an Air Assault, Vapor Wipeout to give air attacks, and Earth Shape to give earth attacks. Air Assault and Earth Pulse both do 15. Slow Sand does 20. 10 air and 10 earth, and reduces speed by 25, but that part isn't important. These two both do 15, differentiating between their element types. Next, we have a Poison Stream, and this one's actually pretty good for a 5 damaging attack in this deck, because you're not going to be using Mugics that often in this deck. You're mainly just going to be trying to pound the living heck out of your opponent. So, therefore, you won't have to worry about this attack doing 0. It'll most likely always do 5. Next, we have Blind Fury. Oh, wait, we also have 2 Poison Streams. We have 2 Blind Furies. 10 air damage and an additional 5 damage if your creature has Recklessness. Then we have a Sedimentium Storm Shield, 2 of them, to heal 5 with Earth and to gain 10 speed. The speed isn't that important. Next up, of course, we have Whirl Whale. Your opponent may not use Mugic cards. In some respects, that might have a drawback because of Appelai's ability, but usually when your opponent's using a Mugic, it's nothing good. So, and also it can do a total of 30 damage. Next, I have 1 Sand Strike, a Trampling Tackle, which is basically the Earth version of Blind Fury. As I said, I have an Arbor Smash and a Dexterous Storm, and a Progressive Speed. I'll just let you look those over. Arbor Smash 5, stat check Courage 50, your creature gains Earth. Dexterous Storm, same thing except speed, and the element you gain is air. Progressive Speed, 5 damage of air, and stat check speed 30, deal 5 damage, stat check speed 50, deal 5 damage, stat check speed 70, deal 5 damage. Then there's also 1 Petrifying Power and Harnessed Rage. Harnessed Rage does 5 damage and does the amount of recklessness your creature has as an additional amount of damage. So if you're using any of the front 3 creatures, it'll do at least 25 damage, because each of them will have 20, including Uberon because of his battle gear. Next we have Mugic. Song of Shelter. Target creature you control may not be the target of Mugic or abilities until end of turn. Howl of the Wind to give air or air 5. Anthem of Stone to give earth or earth 5. Symphony of the Guard. Target creature gains earth 5 and air 5. And if you control Mepetians, they also gain outperform speed 5. Outperform speed, again, not that important. Armament of Agio, whatever. Choose 2 target creatures controlled by the same player. Swap any battle gear on those creatures. Next up, Tune of Serum. Sacrifice a battle gear. If you do, return another battle gear from your discard pile to play and equip it to an unequipped creature. So, mainly, this battle gear would be good if either Ninren or Titanics lost their battle gear. But it can also be good for, say... Actually, I can't really say. I don't know whether abilities stack in Chaotic. Like, whether or not you can use a Mugic that sacrifices a battle gear, and it also activates the sacrificed battle gear's effects. I tried looking that up online. I could not find the answer. So if anybody can tell me, that would be a tremendous help. Now for the locations. We have Europa Shock, the ocean with no water. Initiative, fire, air and earth attacks deal an additional 5 damage. Water attacks are reduced by 5 damage, I think. Attacks is played. When a water attack is played, that attack controller turns card of the next... Oh, so it switches the location. And its Mirage ability is, at the end of combat, engaged creatures gain a Mugic counter. I might even have to get 2 Europa Shocks in here. Next is Gloommire Knight. Unlike my Invisibility Strike deck, Gloommire Knight is actually useful. Initiative, Mepetian. Mugic cards and abilities which relocate a creature have no effect. That is very helpful because you do not want your conjurers getting in a bad position, especially not if they'll be unprotected, meaning by Gatara or whatever his name is. Next, I have one Momark's Catapult. I'll probably replace that with a second Europa Shock, if I can find another one. Castle Rothok, Initiative Earth. The engaged creatures with the lowest power deals 5 less damage. That will not be good against any power decks, but the top liners do have usually pretty high power, and especially Gefatra does. These two both have 80, and Titanics has 60, so it should work out pretty well on the standard point. You might not want to attack with Titanics, though. The City of Kensep. Tablet Dig Site. Initiative Mepedian. At the beginning of combat, each player reveals the top 2 cards of their attack deck. Army. Meh. Any player who reveals 3 or more total build cost from the attacks puts 2 Mugic counters on their engaged creatures. Put the revealed cards on the bottom of the attack deck in any order. Now, the one problem with this card is that, yes, it gives you a good chance to get 2 Mugic counters, but first off, the first main problem is that it could also do that for your opponent. Another big problem is that it might end up getting some of your better attacks all the way at the bottom of your deck, which kind of sucks. Next, we have Vidav's Refectorium. I had that, I think, in the last 2 decks. So if you want to know what that does, attempt to read it. I really don't want to keep talking right now. I'm pretty out of breath. Next up, the Darkened Dunes. Initiative Air. Creatures with Earth gain range and Swift 1. Sands of the Unseen. Initiative Courage. Creatures with Air gain Invisibility, Strike 10. And another Wait, I have 2... Oh, yeah. Okay, I have 2 Vidav's Refectoriums in here. So I might get rid of one Vidav's Refectorium for another Sands of the Unseen. So that is the deck build for my War Beasts Wrath deck. I might try and do the Master Battle today, but I might not have the time. I've been feeling a bit under the weather as of the past hour or so, but I'll try. Oh, and another thing is that this deck literally will suck in an apprentice battle. I tried it out. I got creamed. I only managed to code one of my opponent's creatures, and it was a Flood Morpher, so not that surprising. So yeah, if you make this deck, you might want to make a lot of changes before you think of using an advanced battle. As always with these chaotic decks, please give any better suggestions you might have. They are always welcome. And as always, thank you for watching. Please don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe. Goodbye.